For most of my life as a parent, I believed I was doing it wrong. Everyone around me seemed to have perfect kids. The ones who played football, won awards, made friends without even trying. My son, Ethan Williams, wasn't like that. He was quiet, thoughtful, the kind of boy who noticed when someone else was hurting and couldn't just walk past it. He didn't fit the mold of this town, and because of that, neither did I. People liked to remind me in small, polished ways. The smiles that didn't reach their eyes, the jokes that weren't really jokes. They said I babied him too much, that he needed to toughen up. Maybe they were right, or maybe they just couldn't understand a boy who led with kindness instead of competition. We lived in a place obsessed with appearances. Perfect lawns, perfect families, perfect lies. Ethan didn't play that game. He volunteered at the animal shelter, sketched in quiet corners, found joy in things that didn't make headlines. I was proud of that softness, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't embarrassed sometimes. Because around here, gentleness looked like weakness. The moment everything began to change happened at a school event one Friday evening. The gym smelled like floor wax and old popcorn. Parents clapped at speeches they didn't care about. I stood near the back, half listening, until a sound from the hallway broke through. The kind of laughter that isn't joyful, the kind that hurts. When I looked, a group of boys were recording the janitor as he slipped on a puddle they'd poured on purpose. The mayor's son, the quarterback, the usual untouchables, and off to the side stood Ethan, frozen between fear and fury. He didn't join in. He bent down, helped the man up, said something I couldn't hear, and walked away while the others kept filming. That image stayed with me. For days he moved through the house quieter than usual, his sketchbook untouched, his eyes carrying something heavy I couldn't name. I told myself it was exam stress. I wish I'd paid closer attention. A few days later, the latest online craze hit the school. A so-called truth challenge, where kids posted clips exposing secrets about classmates and teachers for likes. Cruel, reckless, and popular, like most things that spread fast. Then one clip went viral overnight. It showed Ethan's English teacher, Mr. Reynolds, taking money from a fundraiser drawer. The footage was grainy but convincing enough to spark outrage. By the next morning, the school had suspended him pending investigation. That was the same morning my phone started buzzing. Parents whispering that the original footage had come from Ethan's phone, that it had been stolen and edited, and that my son had somehow started all of it. I didn't understand how rumors could move that fast, or why anyone would believe them. When I dropped him off at school, heads turned. Some kids pointed, others whispered. One shouted something I couldn't quite hear, but the way Ethan flinched told me enough. By the end of the week, the boy everyone had ignored for years had become the town's favorite villain, and that was only the beginning. That week, the house felt different. The air was thicker, like even silence had weight. Ethan barely spoke, and when he did, his voice sounded older, like something inside him had cracked. His phone never stopped buzzing. Sometimes he'd glance at it, read whatever poison had been sent his way, and set it face down on the table like he couldn't stand to touch it. Out in town, people stopped meeting my eyes. Conversations ended when I entered a room. Mothers who once smiled at us in the grocery store now whispered behind their hands. I didn't need to hear the words. Their faces told me everything. Their kids were innocent. Mine was the problem. At home, Ethan retreated deeper into himself. He skipped meals, locked his door, and walked home alone instead of waiting for me after school. One night he came in late, hoodie stained with dirt, hands trembling. He said nothing. I told myself not to push, and that was a mistake. By Friday morning, someone had spray-painted one word across his locker: liar. I saw it myself when I dropped him off. He didn't even slow down. The quiet of that hallway was worse than shouting. The school told me they were looking into it. That was all. No follow-up, no concern. The town had already decided who the villain was, and nothing I said would change that. Later that afternoon, I went to the school myself. The principal's office smelled of cologne and printer ink, his trophies gleaming behind him like a collection of polished excuses. He smiled, the kind of smile meant to calm you down while he buried you. He said they had reviewed the video and found no reason to question it. When I asked if anyone had considered that the footage might have been edited, his smile thinned. He told me not to create more drama. I left shaking, not from fear, but from rage at how calm he was while letting a child take the blame. That's when it became clear. This wasn't about truth. It was about protection, about reputation, about the kind of power that keeps the same families in charge generation after generation. That night, Ethan finally broke. He said he'd tried to tell people the truth, but no one listened. Teachers brushed him off. The counselor warned him to stop talking before he made things worse. The system wasn't protecting him. It was protecting the mayor's son. 2 nights later, I found him asleep at the kitchen table, his phone still glowing beside him. On the screen was the viral clip, paused mid-frame. I hit play, watching it again, desperate to understand what everyone else had missed. And then I saw it, a reflection. Faint, almost invisible, in the glass cabinet behind Mr. Reynolds' desk. A boy in a Letterman jacket, school logo clear as day. The mayor's son, that was the proof. The thing they'd tried to hide, and that was the moment I stopped doubting my son. I realized softness wasn't his weakness. It was his strength. He had told the truth in a place that punished honesty. Neither of us knew how far the people protecting their lives were willing to go. By the time the truth finally surfaced, it wouldn't save anyone. It would only show how deep the rot ran. The house had grown quieter by then, too quiet. Most nights ended the same way. A screen glowing in the dark, unanswered messages piling up, and the weight of something neither of us could name pressing on every wall. I wasn't planning to look through Ethan's phone again, but when it buzzed past midnight and didn't stop, that cold parental instinct took over. The one that warns you before the worst news arrives. The screen flashed with numbers I didn't recognize. The last message read only 3 words, "Delete it now." The refrigerator hummed. The hallway clock ticked. I opened the gallery and there it was, the same video I'd seen paused days before. This time, I watched it from the beginning. The classroom was empty except for Mr. Reynolds counting fundraiser envelopes. Then he stepped away, and the camera, still rolling from a desk, kept recording. Moments later, the door opened. A boy in a dark varsity jacket slipped inside, checked the hallway, then placed an envelope inside the teacher's drawer. He moved fast, confident, careless. As he turned to leave, the trophy case caught his reflection, just for a heartbeat. But it was enough. I paused the frame and zoomed in. The face was unmistakable. Tyler Benson, the mayor's son. That was what Ethan had been carrying alone while the town tore him apart. When I confronted him the next morning, there was no anger left in him. Only exhaustion. He said he'd already shown the footage to everyone who mattered. The principal, the counselor, even a teacher he trusted. No one wanted to touch it. The only reply he ever got was a warning. Stop spreading rumors about the mayor's family. He said it without bitterness, almost gently, like someone repeating bad news they'd learned to live with. He'd already accepted that truth didn't stand a chance here. I told him we couldn't let it go. He didn't argue. He just turned away, quiet in the kind of way that comes after too many defeats. The next day, I went to the school myself. The principal's office looked more like a campaign headquarters. Plaques, photographs, awards donated by the mayor's foundation. Everything gleamed with practiced virtue. I laid the printed stills on his desk. He glanced at them, leaned back, and said it wasn't enough proof. Anyone could have edited that. He called the matter closed. Then, in that same even voice, he reminded me how much the Benson family had done for this district, and how a false accusation could ruin a young man's life. He never said which young man he meant. That was the moment I understood. This town didn't protect children. It protected its reflection. I went to the police next. They took notes, nodded, and promised to forward it to the proper department. But when I mentioned the name Benson, the officer's posture shifted. His tone softened into something that sounded like warning. He said it would be better if the school handled things internally. That's when I realized we were on our own. By the following week, things had worsened. Ethan's tires were slashed outside the school. Someone sprayed across our fence in red paint. Liars get what they deserve. I filed another report. Nothing happened. So I started saving everything. Screenshots, voicemails, every piece of evidence I could find. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was survival. Then something unexpected happened. A local reporter reached out. Her name was Hannah Gray. She said she'd heard whispers about a cover-up at Westfield High. I didn't trust her at first. Around here, every favor belonged to someone. But she showed up at the house one evening, quiet and careful, notebook in hand. She didn't promise fame or outrage. She just asked to see the truth for herself. When she watched the video, she didn't speak for a long time. Then she said she wanted to help, but warned me that stories like this never stayed small, and people who told them rarely came out unharmed. I already knew that. For the first time in weeks, someone finally believed us. That small flicker of hope felt dangerous. Because in this town, hope was how they got you to stand up just before they tried to knock you down again. That same night, an envelope appeared on our doorstep. No name, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 5 words written in thick black marker. Stop. or we start with him. I don't remember how long I stood there holding it. When I showed Ethan, he barely reacted. He just said it didn't matter anymore. He was tired of fighting. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial Hannah's number. She told me to stay calm, to keep every scrap of evidence, to back up the files online. She said intimidation only meant we were getting close to something real. That night, Ethan stayed awake on the couch with his laptop open. He wasn't doing homework. He was building a timeline. Every message, every threat, every attempt he'd made to tell the truth. It was his way of making sure the story couldn't vanish, even if he did. A few days later, the mayor's office announced a public event. An evening of integrity. A celebration of students who embodied honesty and leadership. A perfect publicity stunt to scrub their image clean after the scandal. Tyler Benson, of course, was the guest of honor. But when the list of honorees came out, my stomach dropped. Ethan's name was on it too. The same school that had ignored him, shamed him, and branded him a liar was now calling him a model of integrity. It didn't make sense. It felt like bait. A staged redemption meant to silence him under the banner of forgiveness. Ethan didn't want to go. He said it was a trap, that whatever he did, they'd twist it into something ugly. But the way he said it was different this time. Not afraid, just steady. Resigned, but resolved. I told him we couldn't hide forever. He nodded slowly. For the first time in weeks, there was something alive in his eyes again. Not hope, not anger. Something sharper. He'd decided that if they wanted a show, they were going to get one. That night marked the shift. The night my son stopped running from the people who lied about him, and chose to face them on their own stage, in front of the whole town. He wasn't the soft kid they used to laugh at anymore. He'd become something far more dangerous to them. A good person who finally stopped being quiet. The auditorium smelled like wax and fresh paint, the kind of forced cleanliness meant to impress cameras, not people. Every seat was taken, parents whispering, reporters adjusting tripods, faculty wearing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. At the front of the stage, a banner hung proudly. Integrity, leadership, truth. The irony could have lit the whole room. I sat near the back. Ethan was on stage, second row, seated just a few feet from the boy who'd ruined his life. Tyler Benson looked every bit the part. Perfect hair, perfect posture, a medal already hanging around his neck before the ceremony had even started. His father stood off to the side, greeting donors like it was election night. The lights dimmed. The principal took the podium, thanking sponsors and volunteers, repeating phrases about character and moral courage. His voice carried the polished rhythm of a man who'd rehearsed every word in the mirror. My jaw tightened as I watched Ethan. He didn't move, didn't fidget, just sat still, hands clasped in his lap, eyes forward. It wasn't calmness. It was restraint. He'd been humiliated, ignored, and threatened. And still, he sat there with more grace than anyone else in that room. They started calling names. Each student rose to applause, took a handshake, posed for a photo. When Tyler's name was announced, the crowd erupted. The mayor stepped up to present the plaque himself, smiling wide enough for the front page. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled. Tyler turned to the audience, gave that practiced grin, and nodded like the hero he was pretending to be. Then the principal cleared his throat. And finally, for perseverance and integrity in the face of adversity, Ethan Williams. The applause was polite, hesitant, unsure. Some parents clapped slowly, others didn't bother. Ethan stood, walked across the stage, and shook the principal's hand. For a moment, I thought that was it. That he'd take the certificate, nod once, and walk away. But then I saw his hand move to his pocket. He pulled out his phone. Not dramatic, not defiant, just calm. The principal's expression flickered, only for a second, before smoothing back into a smile. Weeks earlier, Ethan had asked a staff member how to connect a phone to the auditorium projector during rehearsal. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. Now I understood why. He stepped up to the microphone, adjusted it slightly, and spoke. Not loudly, but clearly enough that every creak in the auditorium went silent. His voice didn't tremble. He said he was grateful for the award, grateful to the teachers who'd supported him, and grateful for the town that taught him what integrity really meant, even if it wasn't what they intended. It was quiet for a beat. Then the projector screen behind him flickered to life. The video began to play, the same one they had all refused to see. The classroom appeared, the teacher counting envelopes, the door opening, and then, frame by frame, the reflection in the trophy case, Tyler's reflection, staring back at hundreds of faces that had spent months calling my son a liar. For a moment, no one moved. The principal froze mid-step. The mayor's wife gasped. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the speakers. When the video ended, Ethan said nothing. He didn't need to. He stepped back from the microphone and walked toward the edge of the stage while the room erupted into chaos. By the time the principal reached the laptop, dozens of phones were already up, recording. Reporters were standing, shouting questions. Parents whispered to each other in disbelief, piecing together the lie they'd all chosen to believe. A few teachers started to rise, unsure whether to stop him, but it was already too late. The mayor's expression barely changed. He just stood there, smiling tightly, as if his jaw might crack under the strain. Tyler's face drained of color. He tried to speak, but the noise swallowed him. The principal muttered about misunderstandings, about context, but every word sounded weaker than the last. Through it all, Ethan kept walking. Down the stairs, through the aisle, out the doors. No hurry, no guilt, just quiet resolve. I followed him outside. The night air hit like a wave, cool, sharp, alive. He stopped at the edge of the parking lot, breathing hard but steady. Inside, the noise carried through the open doors. Shouts, phones ringing, reporters chasing answers. For the first time in months, the story wasn't about my son. It was about the truth they'd tried to bury. The fallout came quickly. Within days, the video was everywhere, shared, reposted, analyzed frame by frame. Local news ran headlines about new evidence in the fundraiser scandal. The principal issued a statement calling it an unfortunate misunderstanding. The mayor canceled public appearances, and the school board announced an emergency review. None of it changed what had already happened. Ethan had spent months being punished for telling the truth, and now the same people who'd shamed him were scrambling to look innocent. He didn't celebrate. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just wanted to be left alone. Reporters kept calling. Hannah Gray came by once more to thank him for trusting her. She said the story would go national. Ethan nodded politely, but I could tell he didn't care about recognition. He'd never done it for that. He just wanted them to stop lying. He looked lighter, but not free, as if telling the truth had emptied something in him he'd never get back. Over the following week, the principal resigned. Mr. Reynolds was reinstated and quietly cleared of all accusations, and the Benson family issued a vague public apology that didn't mention Ethan by name. People like to say justice had been served, but that wasn't true. Justice would have been not needing proof in the first place. Justice would have been someone believing him before he had to destroy himself to be heard. The town pretended to move on, but something had cracked. The same parents who once whispered about my soft son now avoided my eyes in the grocery store. The same kids who mocked him online suddenly wanted to sit next to him in class. But Ethan didn't hate them. He didn't gloat or lash out. He just went back to his life, volunteering at the shelter, walking home alone, sketching in the evenings like before. Only now there was a stillness in him I hadn't seen before. Not peace exactly, something quieter, something earned. When people asked how I felt about everything that happened, I never knew what to say. Proud didn't seem like the right word. Pride was what parents felt when their kids won trophies or got scholarships. What I felt was relief. Relief that despite everything, I hadn't failed him. The world tried to convince me I'd raised him wrong, that kindness was weakness, that empathy was naive. But standing there that night, watching him face down a room full of people who'd chosen convenience over truth, I realized something I should have known all along. I didn't raise him to win. I raised him to be good. And somehow, in a town that rewarded everything but that, he still chose to be. Life didn't go back to normal after that night. It just became quieter. The headlines faded. The town found new gossip, and people pretended the past had dissolved with time. But some things stayed changed. Mr. Reynolds stopped by once, carrying a small box of cookies and eyes that said more than words ever could. The neighbors waved now, though most couldn't hold my gaze for long. And Ethan, he didn't talk about it anymore. He didn't need to. He'd learned that truth doesn't make you popular. It just makes you free. Some evenings, I'd catch him sketching by the window, the light soft on his face, the same calm expression he had the night everything came undone. He wasn't angry anymore, just older, in a way the world never prepares you for. People used to tell me I was raising him wrong. Now I understand. I wasn't raising him to fit in. I was raising him to stand alone when it mattered, and he did.